think that we can get started, and I guess what we'll want to do is shut down all the mics except Uzi so that we'll be able to hear him best. Is that right? So, Uzi, we're going to turn it over to you and let her rip.
Okay, so first of all, hello everybody from Jerusalem. Oh, now I see also Gerard. Hi, Gerard. So what we'll do is the following. I'll start with a presentation of about 15 to 20 minutes, followed by Gerard, Yoav, and Debbie, each one of them about 5 minutes of their specific research of amphora handles, coins, pottery, and so on. Andrea, how does this work? If you want to raise questions during the presentation, or?
Is my mic on?
Yeah.
Uzi, that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I think you should just go ahead and start, and if somebody has an urgent question, they can speak up, make their presence known. Hi, okay. David, we can see you now. So I think that you can go ahead and get started.
Okay. So Galilee during the Hellenistic period, this places a special challenge for research, mainly because the nearly complete lack of historical sources regarding this region. Actually, from the 8th century BCE up to the Hasmonean revolt in the 2nd century BCE, we have almost no historical sources regarding Galilee, and we know very little about this region. Who were the inhabitants? What was their language, their religion, their ethnic identity, and so on. We know very, very little. And even after the Hasmonean revolt, up to the mid-1st century BCE, after the Roman conquest, when more sources come to light, we suddenly learned that the Galilee is densely settled by Jews. So where did this Jewish population come from, and when? These are very big questions. From the sources, it's obvious that in the time of Yanaim, the late 2nd century BCE at the latest, the Galilee is part of the Hasmonean kingdom. But surprisingly, our sources, mainly the first book of Maccabees and Josephus in his Antiquities, which describe in detail many Hasmonean campaigns, fail to inform us when and how the Galilee came under Hasmonean control. These questions are important for understanding fundamental issues regarding the Second Temple period. Who were the inhabitants of the Galilee in the Hellenistic period? What was the origin of the Jewish population in this region a few generations later? How did the people of the area identify themselves, and so on? Questions that are also of special importance for research of early Christianity when trying to understand the cultural, religious, and ethnic milieu against which early Christianity developed in this region. Well, the lack of historical sources invites answers that will rely on the archaeological record. However, also archaeological knowledge on the Hellenistic period in the Galilee is meager. This results from the sparse settlements in the region during that period, but also from the fact that at many sites the Hellenistic remains were blurred due to continuous occupation or are buried deep beneath Roman and Byzantine layers. A good example I can bring is Sepphoris, for example. Except for stray finds of coins and sherds and a few fragmented walls in the upper city, we know nothing about the site, its plan, or its material culture during the Hellenistic period. And this is in a site where wide-scale excavations have been conducted for over 30 years. In this state of affairs, key matters in the archaeological research of the Galilee and the Hellenistic period remain unclear, starting with settlement patterns, plans, distribution, means of livelihood, typology and chronology of pottery, and other small finds, and so on. In fact, I just have to do a picture. In fact, today our perception is based mainly on sites outside or on the margins of the Galilee where Hellenistic layers have been excavated, such as Tel Anafa and Tel Kedesh in the north, sites that clearly belong to the Phoenician realm, or the city of Beit She'an in the south. It is doubtful if these sites indeed reflect the material culture of the inner parts of Galilee, and they clearly cannot help us in tracking the settlement of ethnic changes, since also during the Roman period they remained outside of the Jewish Galilee. These heavy questions, I would say, brought us to initiate a new archaeological project that focuses on Galilee during the Hellenistic period. The goals are to study the material culture, the settlement patterns, the means of livelihood, and above all to try and shed some new light on the identity of the local population. The project is based on two complementary field studies. The first one is an intensive survey of Hellenistic sites in a strip across the lower Galilee, from the hinterland of Akko on the Phoenician coast in the west to the Sea of Galilee in the east. By the way, do you see the map now? Or?
So Uzi, that's what I was exactly just wondering, is so that the slides are not advancing at this end.
Oh, so I already am on slide number 3, but I don't know how.
So why aren't the slides advancing? Okay, technical help is on the way. Oh, there we go. Are you guys doing that, or is he doing that?
We're doing that, yeah.
I pressed on a button, but now it's running on its own. So I'll stop this. Okay, do you see now? Oh, something disappeared now.
No.
Try it now.
Okay, do you see now a map of Galilee with red circles?
No. No, your slides are not advancing. I mean, we can make them advance, but the idea, of course, was that you should be completely in control. And
I don't know what I'm doing wrong here.
You might not be doing anything wrong, Uzi. Don't be so quick to take the blame.
Could you try changing the slides again, please?
Could you try one more time, Uzi? There you go.
There you go.
Okay, now you can do it. Okay, you want to just, there you go. Apparently you're in control now.
Back. I was talking about the scarcity of Hellenistic excavation in the inner part of Galilee. And we see here the major excavations of Hellenistic period sites on the margins of the Galilee. Tel Anafa and Tel Kedesh and Beit She'an and Akko, sites that are outside the main area of Jewish Galilee, of which we know very little. And I'm moving now to the first part of our research. Again, our research is based on two different field studies. The first is a survey of Hellenistic sites across the Galilee, from the coast in the area of Akko Ptolemais, and till the Sea of Galilee in the east. What we're doing is we're going site after site and collecting finds, pottery, coins, whatever we can find, and also surveying the sites in general. Where are they located? The characteristics of the site, where are they located, water sources, and so on. And this is meant to give us a general view of settlement patterns in the Galilee, across the Galilee, changes in material culture from sites in the west to sites in the east, and so on. The second stage of the second part of the research is an excavation of a key site of the Hellenistic period in Lower Galilee, an area that later will become the heart of Jewish settlement in the Galilee, an area approximately between Tiberias and Sepphoris. And here we were faced with the challenge of choosing a site. So we're looking for a site that can answer our questions, and that Hellenistic remains are not buried deep beneath Roman and Byzantine sites, situation that is very common in the Galilee. And here we had some advantage of previous surveys in the area, and in a survey conducted in this region in the late 1990s, I came across a site named Khirbet el-Eika, which is situated in a strategic location above the Arbel Valley in the eastern part of Lower Galilee. This is a site located on an isolated mountain which is inaccessible from three directions, and just from the direction you see now from the right side of the picture from the south, it's accessible through this saddle. We don't know the ancient name of the site. The Arab name of the last few generations is Khirbet el-Eika, and the site dominates the valley beneath it, and actually very large portions of the eastern Galilee can be seen from this mountaintop. And right beneath the site, at the hill of at the base of the mountain, is Ein Chitin, which is the largest spring in this region, which is the water source of the site. But the access is pretty difficult because the mountain is very steep. In any case, during the survey conducted about 15 years ago, we found lots of Hellenistic period pottery with nothing later in the site, and we then came to the conclusion that this site was apparently settled only in the Hellenistic period and did not continue later on, and this obviously points to the great potential of the site for our current questions and interests. And we started excavating the site 2 years ago, and this July we finished the second season of excavation on the site. What you see here on the left is a topographic map of the site, and you can see the steepness of the mountain. And our excavations now are concentrated in the upper part of the hill. And up to now, we've opened 4 fields of excavations. The upper field, signed here by E, is on the summit of the site. Then we have Area F, which is a lower terrace to the south, and Area G on the southern part of the site. But before I describe the different areas and the finds, I just want to give a short overview of the site, the general situation in the site. So first of all, in every spot we stick our pick in the ground. I don't know if I can say that in English, how it's said, but in every location where we break topsoil, we're straight in the 2nd century BCE, with nothing, no later layer covering the site. Interestingly, in most places also without earlier layers, meaning in most, or actually wherever we excavated, we find basically one phase, probably a few generations. There's just one location, which I will show later, where we have 2 phases, but they also seem to be very close by. So it seems to be, at least where we have been excavating up to now, a very short-lived site. I would say 3rd to mid-2nd century BCE, or late 3rd to mid-2nd century BCE. The third and maybe most important point is that the site was suddenly abandoned, and the inhabitants left all their goodies, all the household, all the vessels on the floors, and it seemed like they fled the site and never came back to collect their belongings. And this provides us with a very rich assemblage of artifacts which sheds, I think, important light on the material culture of Lower Galilee in the Hellenistic period. So I'll shortly run through the various areas, and I'll start down on the southern part of the site, where we unearthed what seems to be a fortification wall of the site. Here you can follow it for over 20 meters long. We have the western wall of the site, and a corner with the southern wall of the site, which protects the area from which the site was approached through the saddle. And Andrea, can you see the mouse when I move it?
No, we can't see the mouse. Although, as long as I've got the microphone, let me say that these pictures are phenomenal.
Okay, so on the left you can see an aerial view looking north of this wall. It's about a 1.2 meter wide wall, and on the right side you can see a trench we excavated to the foundations of the wall, going down to bedrock, and the finds down till bedrock are basically late 3rd, early 2nd century, with 4 coins of Antiochus III, which suggests an early 2nd century for the construction of this wall. And it seems that the wall surrounding the site did not surround the entire village. I move now to the next image, an aerial photograph of the wall surrounding the village, and you can see that it seems to be a wall restricted just to the summit of the site and not surrounding the entire village. We're not sure yet about the validity of this picture, but what seems to be the situation currently is that we have a wall that is just on the upper part of the mountain, some sort of like an acropolis of a rural site or something like that. But this is an issue that still we have to figure out. I'm moving now to area F, an area in in the lower terrace on the upper side, upper part of the site, and what we have here is a domestic structure. On the left, in the plan on the left, you see a courtyard, and then we have a few rooms, which seems to be a domestic structure. We don't have a lot of comparisons because very few domestic structures of the Hellenistic period were excavated in the Galilee. But from the finds within this structure, it seems to be totally domestic with agricultural implements and household implements and so on, and a few finds which point to probably also to a woman presence in the site. And you can see different types of finds from this domestic structure, from pottery vessels, various kinds of pottery vessels, stone objects, stone tools such as this Olympian mill, intact metal objects like this copper bowl, oil lamps, and so on. A very rich assemblage of finds from this house, but nevertheless something that seems rural, and the building technique and the building itself is, I would say, nothing to write home about. Pretty simple.
Uzi, can I ask? Uzi, can you hear me?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Can I ask? So you say rural, not necessarily because of the nature of the finds, some of which are very impressive, but because of the size of the house, the location of the site, that it's not a city on that account.
Right, and mainly the building materials and building techniques, which seem pretty poor.
And there's no evidence inside the houses of anything like interior decor, stucco decoration. You don't find tesserae for mosaic floors.
No, nothing whatsoever. I'll maybe raise 2 points of interest regarding this specific building. First of all, the building technique here. In some of the walls, we have a building technique well known from the Phoenician coast. That's I tried putting it here in the slide. It's built of ashlars in intervals. That's what's here in red. And between them, field stones and rough stones,
Very strange. Back.
So this compartment building or whatever is known from the Phoenician coast. The second point of interest is that the walls are built in the lower part of stone. From about a meter up, they're built of mud bricks, which was very interesting because as someone coming from the Roman period, I never come across this kind of. I think maybe someone's phone is making noise.
We're trying to figure it
Andrea, can you hear me with this noise?
Yeah, but we're trying to undo this noise. David Jacobson.
going on.
Oh, yay. We
Okay.
think, okay. Back to you, Uzi.
Okay, so I'm continuing. I'm moving now to Area E, which is in the upper part of the site on the summit. And in the southern part of Area E, we came across a building with like long rooms built on the bedrock, some of them leaving the bedrock like wild without smoothing it. And one of these rooms, the one in the picture and to which the arrow is pointing, was really exceptional in terms of the finds in this room. It's been a long and narrow room. We call this house the storehouse, and in this western room there were dozens and dozens of vessels, from fish plates, red and black fish plates, and cooking pots and casseroles, and jars containing burnt lentils, and jugs and juglets, and so on. But above all, and most important, were the amphora. About between 40 and 45 amphora coming from the Aegeans, about half of them from Rhodes and half from Kos, with a few additionals that we did not know for sure where they came from. So these are of special importance, first because they point to commercial connections, obviously, with the Mediterranean coast, but second, because of their stamped handles, which provide us with a date of a specific year, and these seem to point to a destruction of the room, the structure, and apparently the entire site around 145, maybe 144 BCE, and we'll come back to this later. So obviously it was very surprising to find such a large collection of imported amphora in a rural site about 40 kilometers from the Mediterranean coast. Other interesting finds here were, as I said, jars with burnt agricultural products, bronze mirror, an iron huge hammer, and other metal objects. I'm moving now to the last excavation area I will describe, and this is also in Area E, but this is the very top of the summit of the site, the highest point, and this is the only area where we identified clearly two distinct phases of building, although the finds within these buildings seem to point that they're very close in date. Both are in the Hellenistic period, and again, basically nothing post-dates the mid-2nd century BCE. So I'll start with the later structure, which appears here in red, which is a square 7 by 7 meters massive structure with massive walls. Its location at the highest point of the site, the plan, the fact there are no doorways, all seem to suggest this is some sort of a watchtower. Or I would say the foundations of a watchtower, which was built on top of this. And that's the easy part. The more complicated part is the earlier phase of building here, which is signed here with yellow lines. The plan is not clear enough, but what we can say is that this seems to be also some sort of a public building and not a domestic structure and not a storage structure. First of all, the building technique and the building, the parts of the building. So we have, you can see it on the picture on the left, we have here two ashlar-built piers, two couples of piers, which produce two wide openings, 2 meters wide, which I put on the plan with yellow arrows pointing to these openings. The entire area, the base of bedrock was very carefully smoothed and straightened. There you can see from the aerial photograph, a lot of effort was put there into preparing this area for construction. But what exactly, except the fact that it seems to be something monumental and something public, we can't say for sure what this building was used for. But what we can say is that there were very few storage vessels, and it doesn't seem to be, again, some sort of a storage facility or something like that. And the finds inside the early building are of special or are unique. And here on the right you can see a few of them. For example, the ungentarium, or the mold-made bowl, which you can see here on top on the right, with this depiction of some sort of a ceremonial parade or something, and above all, this incense shovel, this bronze incense shovel with a duck head handle, which is also very interesting. All these seem to point to some special importance of this building. I'm hesitant to say cultic purpose, but it's a possibility, but we don't have any clear proof. And I see Debbie is smiling. Debbie, we can see you here. So, so I'm hesitant to say something. Okay, so I'll just sum up my part. So just to conclude, up to now in 2 seasons, the site proved to be very rich in finds and with great potential of shedding light on the material culture of Galilee in the Hellenistic period. We have we have about 100 restorable vessels. Obviously, we don't have the budget to restore all of them, but we have already quite a nice collection of restore. This is all from that storage room we saw earlier, and it's a small fraction of the vessels in that room. Something's wrong with this presentation. There's supposed to be a chart here, but I don't see the chart. I just see the pictures.
Oh, we don't see the chart either. I don't know what happened.
Okay, I had here a chart of a collection of some of the amphora stamped handles per year, with a large concentration in the 150s, and Jal will talk about this more in detail, up to 145 BCE. And the next lacking chart is the chart of the coins. Also a rich collection of coins, over 100 Persian and Hellenistic period coins. Again, the latest of which are Demetrius II, giving us a date of around 144 BCE. Yoav says I took his point, so he's going home. Other important finds here are a really special collection of metal objects, stone objects, but surprisingly not even a single glass vessel. Okay, I know it's before the blown glass is invented, but even so. Oh, okay. But a major question we are still struggling with is the nature of this site. Is this site a typical site of Galilee? Can it be a good reflection of Galilee in the Hellenistic period or not? That's a question we're struggling with basically because we don't have any good sites to compare it with in our region. Again, except for Tel Anafa or Tel Kedesh, which belong already to a totally different world, or Beit She'an, which also belongs to a different world. We don't have anything good to compare with. The exceptional amount of imported wine amphora from the Aegeans points to strong connections with the Mediterranean coast, most likely with Akko, which is presented also very strongly in the numismatic finds. That's the closest seaport to us, but we have to bear in mind that even after the journey across the sea, you still have to cross the Galilee, some 40 kilometers of transport, each vessel about, 30 kilos when it's full, across 40 kilometers across the Galilee, and then for dessert climbing up to the mountaintop. That's a real journey for so many wine amphora, and it's really a interesting question. Since Donald and Gerard are here, so maybe I'll present just what they say when they come to the site. This is supposed to be some sort of or an army post or some sort of official post or something. It doesn't seem like local population, but as a matter of fact, we didn't find evidence neither for army nor for any officials present at the site, so I really don't know. In terms of the domestic structure, it looks like something I would expect in a rural site in the Galilee. So again, the question of the nature of the site, is this a unique site or is it typical, is a question that we're still struggling with. As for the identity of the local population, besides the close ties with the Phoenician coast, which I pointed out above, initial observation into the archaeozoological remains points that pigs were a main part of the diet of the local population. I think that in the 2nd century BCE, it's pretty safe to say that this is a pretty strong argument that it's a non-Jewish population. The last point I want to raise is the end of the site around, again, 144 BCE, give or take not too much, maybe a year here, a year there, I think. But as we all know, this fits very well with Kedesh, and I have hints for a few additional sites with abandonment around this year. What does this tell us? Is this an early Hasmonean campaign into Galilee, Jonathan's campaign to Kedesh? Is this something else? An important point here is the establishment of a new village at the foot of the site, a village that is called Kfar Chitaya, which we know very well as a Jewish village in the Roman period sources, which sits on the spring of the site and on the agricultural lands of the site, and seems to point to some sort of ethnical replacement in this location. And we have a few additional sites with a similar picture of what seems to be sites with close connection to the Phoenician coast in the Hellenistic period, and then somewhere in the late 2nd or early 1st century BCE, a new site on or right nearby with Jewish identity. So I think the finds point more to some connection to the Hasmonean takeover of this region, but I'll leave this for the later discussion of this meeting. So I'll give now the microphone to to Gerald, but I can't present for some reason his graph.
Lizzie, thank you so much. That was fantastic. Gerald, can you, I see you're with Sylvie. You guys can hear us, yeah? So Gerald and Sylvie. Sylvie has to be made unmuted. There we go. There we go. So yeah. Gerald, do you have
Donald, you want to, or I say what I have to say and then you add. Actually, if we speak about Malaysia, for example, it's exactly the contrary because there is a correlation between the
so we're trying to figure out if we can get it up on the
diminution of amphoras and the date
so Brian here
assigned to the Maccabean revolt. Obviously, Malaysia suffered from something. I don't want to be more precise because this is the reason of this group. That really lowered the import of Rhodian amphoras. Of course, I'm talking about Rhodian amphoras because these are dated and there are so many in Malaysia that this is definitely significant. I would say I found about 15 years, but I'm sure it's definitely 10 years, and that's a lot. So for the Jews coming from Jerusalem to damage or to maybe to do some sort of I don't know boxes or whatever or a region which is so much damage that very few comparatively very few amphoras from let's say the Egyptian arrived in Malaysia. I find it doubtful, but it is something which is very clear. Yes. I swear, it's very hard here. We are on the coast. We are on the coast. You Andrea, Andrea, sì, non ricordo. Andrea, ah,
Gerald, I have a question about this this strong showing of amphoras between 165 and 145. And my question is directed at both you and Donald. So overall, throughout the southern Levant, is that a span of time, 165 to 145, with a lot of amphoras in general, that is, it might not be something peculiar to Eika if this is a period of very intensive and widespread production and distribution of rhodium and Cohens in this region?
Yes, I have a question. Can I help? If we have something like 40
Thanks, that's great. Donald, do you want to add something to that? And if you do, we have to unmute you. But we're about to do that. Okay, you're on.
Span over 40 years,
Donald, do you have something you want to say to that?
Gerald had said that everything to be a bit later.
Donald, can you hear us?
And the other two sites will continue beyond 145. And I was sharing the general feeling of the expedition team
Well, I don't know. For IKEA, we have at least
So Donald, maybe
chance.
Utah, thanks.
It's not 90.
If you can hear us,
And
type
of
something.
course, I still have
Not
to
hear
work
you, and it
because
seems that you
there are answers that can be well, we could see them during the excavation that they can be also restored and some is often the case be restored you can suggest strongly that they come from the same mantra because of the context. So, but if we speak about if you have 100 and you divide the part by 2, this is purely theoretical, but it gives you an idea.
Donald, would you say that again? We were muting some other microphones, so we didn't get feedback in this room, so we couldn't really hear you.
You have about 50 emperors, and you have to add let's say, I don't remember exactly, but 4 or 6, which are not the Rhodians. So that for IKEA, it's when you see the site and where it is located, this is a lot, but this can be understood because the site is not very easily
yeah, that's true. That's
accessible. And for the people who were there on the top.
Okay, do other people have some questions for Gerald about the emperors? Anybody else online?
Explained. This is a lot. If we speak about
yes, you can.
If you speak about Macedon, if you take all the types of emperors, this is enormous. So I just give my opinion, and then there will definitely be a discussion because between us there are already, I mean, the excavators and Donald. My feeling is that IKEA is a post maybe for exploiting the area all around. You've seen the pictures. It's not exactly a very flat region, but you can go down and then work in some fields which maybe we have to understand better if we can get some pollen or whatever botanists may sample and say to us that they may be ancient and to comparison of whatever. Or a post, a military post. The problem is if it's a military post, the families there. And why not? It's because you can see the whole region. I mean, almost the whole Galilee. So that's logical. The thing is, are you in time of conflict? Definitely for most of the year, because you have the general problem with the revolt. I'm not talking about the end of the story. And the Pomazor, I'm absolutely convinced that this is intermediate supply trade from the harbor, which I surmise was Jaffa. They were putting them in this very big state. According to what we have of the building, because I'm not exactly sure that we have enough to understand, considering the types, and certain types are represented in a relatively very big number, like what we call the income groups for us, and you have also North African and so on. And by the way, roads is not exactly the most important of all of them. The quantitative variety points to redistribution center or a reuse of MTM for us. But for this, I don't know. But you cannot how do you say? Dismiss completely this.
Thanks, Gerald. I guess it's also worthwhile pointing out when we think about the images that Uzi showed us of how much has been excavated, that in fact, not that much has been excavated. So if you just think about the possibility of a multiplier, there's no reason to think that Uzi and his team hit the only room like that at the site, I suppose. I see Uzi smiling, so I'm guessing. So Sylvie, I just would say, you know, even if not every other room that they would find there would have that quantity, still it's probable that there's plenty more where that came from.
I have another presentation. It says the charts that didn't show up before.
Oh. Should we, let's see, is Yoav still there, Uzi?
Hello. I want to just ask one question.
Oh, David, hi. Yeah, sure.
I couldn't hear Donald very clearly. What is, just very short, what is the date range of the coins that have been found there? And maybe this is one for Gerald. What's the date range of the amphora stamps?
So who should speak to the date range of the coins? I thought it was Yoav. el-Eika. Oh, hold on. Can you guys unmute? Wait. And in Uzi's room, hi, I see you, but we have to unmute you. Hold on. We have to unmute Uzi Liebner's mic. Okay, you're good to go.
Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So, hello everybody. Thank you for the opportunity. I'll do it in short. If we deal with the coins, what we have starts with the Persian period. The earliest coins that we have are going back to the 5th and 4th. Oops. You're working? Okay. But do you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you. We're uploading something at this end. I don't know what.
The earliest coins that we have are going back to the 5th and 4th century BC.
Okay, good.
Okay. Here you can see the main assemblage
Okay, so
of about more than 110 coins from the last 2 seasons and some earlier stuff that was collected at the site. And this is the main find. We have some later coins from topsoilers, to Hasmonean and a bit late Roman and Islamic coins, but they are not included in this diagram that you see. The main amount that we have is of course Seleucid. We have some Ptolemaic coins, but the main are Seleucid, which starts from Antiochus III and down to Demetrius II, first reign. That's it. We have nothing earlier, nothing later. And I can tell you that me and Lucy are working very intensively with the metal detectors at the site, so I don't think we missed much. Of course we missed something, but we didn't miss much. So I do think that at least for now, for the excavated areas, this covers very well the date from the site. That's in short. Any questions? I'll be happy to answer.
David, does that answer your question?
yeah. Yes, it does, very directly. I like this chart, it's very clear. Yeah. Well, now let's go to the amphora animals.
So Brian, do you have that? Yes, exactly. So there's the chart that we didn't see before. That's nice. So
It's very
Gerald,
consistent.
you want to? It's very consistent, right?
Thank you.
It's very consistent. I actually have a question thinking about exactly this, both the quantities and the consistencies. I have a question for Donald and Gerald, I guess specifically, as to how that compares with Kadesh, because I feel like we don't have very many coins. No, you're right, Donald. I don't know if we're good, but yeah, I was just wondering very quickly if you had a comment on how that would compare, just because of David's question and point
Very good.
about the quantity and the consistency.
I have one. Sorry, I have one other one about the amphora handles. What proportion of them are from Rhodes? And does the proportion of the Rhodian stamps vary over time, or what?
A similar picture. There are definitely coins that go that are dated after 145, and in fact there are quite a few. So at Kaddish, it looks like the squatters settlement, whatever
I said
it was had more coins than
Yes.
amphora handles in its period of time.
Yes.
I don't know, people might have...
It's interesting that the amphora handles actually go back to the almost beginning of the Seleucid occupation of southern Levant.
The thing that is most striking here, and it's quite clear with the announcements and the coins that the 145 was so.
They stopped later than the amphora handles in Jerusalem, as far the stamps in Jerusalem, as far as I remember. They go down to 145. Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken.
Whereas in Jerusalem, where do they? I thought they stopped at about 165.
Then we see things really do.
Okay, everybody, hold on one second, because now we have about 3 questions up in the air at this time. So David has been noting with interest the span of dates of the Rhodian amphoras at Eika, and thinking about them in comparison with Jerusalem, thinking about them in conjunction with the beginning of Seleucid rule. And Gerald was about to say something about that, but before he responds, I would just like Donald to be able to finish his answer to the question about a quick comparison of the range of amphoras and coins at Eika with that at Khirbet, and then we can get Gerald's response, David, to you. So Donald, it's you now. Yeah, I guess my point was, Yoav, you know, I'm super impressed by the number of coins you have from the first half and especially the second quarter of the 2nd century. You know, I'm as David is, I'm really struck by that, because the majority of coins at Khirbet are after the 145 destruction or abandonment, and relatively, I've always wondered why we have, you know, relatively speaking, such a small number of coins from Khirbet. And it makes me wonder, to go all the way back to Uzi's original question or description of Eika as rural. And I almost, Danny, I'm interested in what you think about this. Is the quantity of coins at Eika surprise you? Can Danny? Yes.
Don't forget, Andrea, that at Khirbet, your metal detectors were not allowed, and that makes a huge difference.
All right. Guilty. Yeah, I heard you. Okay. Point taken. So Gerald, now back to you. David had a question about, or maybe Donald. David was interested in the comparison of the range of amphora handles, amphoras, at Eika compared to Jerusalem. David, isn't that right?
First,
What's interesting is the chronological range compared with Jerusalem. And also I'm interested to know the division between Rhodian and other Hellenistic and porous stones.
the same observation, the handles in el-Eika and in Jerusalem and Kadesh. Kadesh is a squatter group, squatter place, but in Jerusalem, a huge city with a lot of occupation. There are emperors after 145, certainly, but in Jerusalem, there are other issues that come up because there are different ways of interpreting what's going on after and why the imports of emperors may have stopped exactly in 145.
Should we quickly move on to Debbie? Debbie, do you have some stuff to tell us about the pottery?
Okay, would you like to move to the pottery part in the presentation, or I should do that?
Yeah, do we have slides from you? Okay, hold on. We're
Yeah,
going to get
they were supposed to have, they
We're
were,
going to get your pictures up on the screen. Hold on.
okay, but I might add some things to all the discussions here now, if I may. First, when Uzi was talking about if Ika is a good site to conclude things about the gallery, I think there is a new site or a new excavation in a site which is a rural site. Danny, can you help me with the name? Karen Cavallo is digging there, and it's more or less from the same period. It ended at the middle of the 2nd century BCE, and it shares with Ika the storage jars, the local storage jars, but it doesn't have a single piece of imported pottery. And it is much more close to the coast than Ika. So I'm not sure if Ika can be representative of all the gallery. Probably Uzi will dig in the near future more sites, and the picture will be a little more complex than what we see by now. So I don't have a lot of things to add to what Uzi said, but it's a very, very, very rich assemblage. It's very similar to Khirbet in terms of form. As you can see, we have a lot of amphoras, storage jars. The proportions of the vessels are some more or less 45% of storage vessels, serving vessels are 25%, cooking and preparing vessels are 22%, personal and lamps are 3% and 2%. So this is a real domestic assemblage. And in terms of fabric, I am not doing anything with the petrography, which is Michael part of the project, which I will be very glad to see. But visually, based on visual observations, we have northern coastal fabric and central coastal fabric and local Galilean fabric, semi-fine fabric. All the fish plates are, or most of them are of the BSP fabric. And if you want to ask something about it, please do that.
Well, I'm fine with that. I understand all of this.
You understand all of this. For all the others, in general, it's a very rich assemblage. It has a large amount of imported pottery besides local forms. It's very variated. The word I can say is that it is characteristic of a domestic, what we will expect in a domestic household from the middle of the 2nd century BC.
Debbie, how does this material compare with the Helistaba?
Again?
How does this material compare to Tel Istaba?
Okay, it's much earlier. We are not talking, it's much earlier. It's earlier. I don't have the same bowls. In Tel Istaba, we are talking about the end of the 2nd century BCE. The forms of the cooking pots are different. And the forms of the fish plates. We have the fish plates that have the deep depression here. The best comparing site is Khirbet of the face before the squatters, the main face of Khirbet actually. It doesn't speak with Nisa Skytopolis. It speaks with Khirbet and it speaks with Akko. And when we met in Lyon, I saw the material from Syria, from the Syrian coast, and it speaks with this here more than with Beit She'an. But I guess it has to do with a chronological criteria more than something else. And in matters of, I have another thing to add maybe to the amphora dialogue that was going on here, is that for the last year I am checking all the material from the Jerusalem and the Shelah area from the 4th and the 3rd century BCE, and I can say for sure that for the 3rd century, for good 3rd century assemblages that we have in that area, we don't have the amphoras. You have them from Marissa and south. You don't have those in the central Shelah. You don't have those in the rural sphere of Jerusalem. I am talking about the first or the closer agricultural sphere around Jerusalem. And Jerusalem, I think we need to think about it a little different now that we know that the city of David was occupied by the Hatra, and I'm not sure it's representative of what happened there around. So I think this amphora occurrence or avoidance of using them, it has to do with, it might have to do with not just city or rural, but more with other issues, probably.
So Debbie, let me make sure I understand. Why do we do this?
Right next to each other.
Oh, Debbie, okay. So the comparison you were just making with about the emperors was a comparison of the 3rd century, the emperors in the 3rd century with the emperors in the first half of the 2nd. Isn't that right? In other words, who was getting Aegean wine when the country was under, or the region was under Ptolemaic rule, as opposed to under Seleucid rule. So that could also be a consideration. That is not the receivers, but who's in charge.
This probably Gerald and Donald know much better. I'm not saying that it's different between the Ptolemaic rule and the Seleucid rule. I am saying actually, Gerald, you can correct me, but I think also in the 3rd and the 2nd century, places as Marisha or Yafo or the coast or even, I don't know, Scythopolis for the sake of the discussion, they do have amphoras, and the certain region, which is the central hill and the central Selah, avoid the use of it during the 3rd and 2nd century.
Oh, okay. So your point is regional.
My first point is regional. I'm not sure that the region doesn't have to do with something else. But for now, I can say that the picture that we see is that in a certain region, they don't consume the wine from the amphora during the 3rd and the 2nd century.
Donald or Gerald, do you have anything you want to say?
At the city of David, which is another donor.
Donald, I'm sorry, hold on a second, we have to unmute you. Okay, go ahead. Oh, Donald, hold on a second, because we still can't, we can see your lips moving, but we can't hear you. Hold on, so why can't we hear him? So Donald, at your end, can you see if your mic is on? Because it looks like it's on from our end, but it's not on from your end. You, Donald, are voiceless to us right now. We cannot hear you. Yeah, you could try typing. And everybody, while Donald is typing, does anybody else have a question or a comment? Gerald? I don't know. Lucy, did you want to say something? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Uzi, I have to say, I'm delighted that you don't have terra sigillata. In my opinion, you shouldn't have it. And Debbie, you're right. You have the northern coastal fine predecessors. Yes, right. Gerald, Donald had typed that he was hoping you would respond to Debbie's points about the regional variation in where the imported amphors are. So Gerald is going to respond. That was So, Gerald, did you have something to say to us? Yeah. Gerald and Sylvie, we think you're frozen. So can you hear us? If you hear us, type to us. Oh, good. Sylvia's typing. Okay. Okay, now you can. Okay, so Gerald? So I don't, Gerald, if you're talking, we can't hear you, nor are you moving. I think that your picture is frozen. All right, well, too bad. We're gonna, okay, this has been great. Do you have oh, okay, so we're back here in Boston, and Paul Cosman has something to ask or say.
This is really fascinating. Thank you so much. At the risk of adding 2 and 2 and getting 22, can I ask if it would be possible to give an overall hypothetical historical interpretation to this? Are we dealing with a post-Panion Seleucid provincialization of this landscape? It looks like potentially the site of Eika privileges defense over agricultural exploitation. It's at the top of the hill. It's got the big defensive wall. Is this a sort of Seleucid colonization in the region? Not in terms of a big city, but perhaps a katoikia of the kind we see elsewhere. A small community defending a headland or a mountainside, overlooking a valley, controlling above all roadway access. It does fit, I think, somewhat with our narrative sources about Seleucus IV, especially being the guy who is sort of consolidating control over this region.
Okay.
Okay, I'll try to answer. But I don't know if it's if we can suggest like retired soldiers settling here, but definitely defensive issues were very important, much more important than the access to the water. As I hinted before, the water is down beneath, pretty hard to get there, but nevertheless they settled on the mountain top and surrounded at least the Acropolis with a wall. From what we saw during the survey and also previous surveys, it seems that this is typical of Hellenistic period sites in general, meaning most of them are located on hilltops. In some of them we could identify on the surface what seemed to be like remains of a wall.
Uzi, Sylvie
So,
typed in a question
I don't
saying,
think
could the
this is unique. I
fortified
think this is
villages
the common
mean that the region
settlement
was full
pattern
of
of
brigands,
this
meaning
period.
lack of state presence?
But nevertheless, maybe the concentration, the special concentration of the finds may hint to specifically wealthy inhabitants. So I cannot rule out the suggestion of some sort of a katoka, but I don't have any way to prove it. In terms of a military post, as I said before, we don't have even a single, I would say, army equivalent. We have maybe an arrowhead or an arrowhead and a half. So that you can find in every place in the gallery. But we don't have anything that hints to any military presence. But again, it may be retired soldiers or some sort of a group of benefited people who got this stretch of land. It definitely gives the impression, the location of the site, of a control over the hinterland, sitting on this high mountain and watching all the surrounding very rich lands beneath them clearly gives some sort of a feeling, at least, that this was very prominent in the landscape, this site. It can be seen from kilometers away, and it definitely is very visible and overlooks, I would say, the countryside. I hoped we would find an inscription of
Perhaps
something which could shed
Mickey
light on the
Osbon's petrographic
identity of the
studies
locals, but up to
will
now,
help confirm stronger
damn comfortable
linkages,
we don't
I
have any
suspect.
even
For example,
fragment of,
looking at Debbie's photographs and drawings, that most, if not all, of your cookware is coming from Akko, because it's absolutely identical to the stuff we have at Kadesh, which we've shown petrographically comes from Akko. So that simply means some kind of supply connection and not necessarily control,
I
but
think
it does
definitely may be the situation
give us
in the
evidence of
second half. This is
communication,
more
direct
based
communication.
on the historical perspective, because most, if not all, of these fortifications, except for Khirbet were not dated archaeologically. But I think in the later stages of the second half of the 2nd century BCE, when the Seleucid Empire starts to crumble apart, it's reasonable that the security in this remote area.
I raised my virtual hand before, but no one paid attention. I have in fact two questions. One is probably to Debbie. Is the evidence of the 3rd century ceramic evidence out in the 3rd century, or
By the people of the Phoenician coast, mainly Akko, he suggested a chain of fortifications.
Oh, Danny, would you just repeat the question, and then we'll turn Debbie on.
Suggesting that
I
Akko actually
think
controlled
the numismatic
the
picture is
gallery.
a little interesting in the lower end. What I'm asking, is there evidence, ceramic evidence, at the beginning of the 3rd century, not only to the end of it?
Oh, if there's evidence
I
at the
don't think
beginning
we
of the
have
3rd
any way
century.
to
Okay,
prove it,
Debbie,
but
you are
I think it's a reasonable suggestion. again, also the coinage, the numismatic evidence points to a very strong connection with Akko. A large proportion of the coins from the first half of the 2nd century coming from Akko, and here I see Danny wants to comment, and I know already about what.
Okay, I'm asking because we are used to that sites that are settled in the Seleucid period would have a handful of Ptolemaic coins. That's sort of normal. But here we also have more than just 1 or 2 Persian period coins. In fact, I had a discussion with Yoav a few hours ago on this. And that is very interesting because it does not seem to go with any Persian period pottery. So the question of Yoav was, why are these Persian period coins in use still in the Hellenistic period? I don't know. So that's one question that we'll have to find. Maybe Uzi, you can look for some Persian period part of the area. I don't know what to say. As for Akko, I think in my study I showed quite forcefully that Akko was the main supplier of coins in the entire Palestine until the end of the reign of Antiochus V. So the fact that there are so many coins of Akko is not necessarily because that was the control of the area, but that was the main mint of the area. And I'm actually interested to know what is the mint of the coin of Demetrius II. Can you have answered that? The what? Ah, okay.
Uzi, could I ask you a question about that? What can you see Ika from Mitzpeh Yamim and from? Excellent. Thank you. That's a good question. That is a really interesting question, and maybe Uzi and Danny, we can get that information and have it ready to bring into the discussion at our next brown bag, which will be 1 month from now in late October. Uzi, I hope you'll be able to join us, and we'll be focusing then on Mazor.
The Persian period coins are silver coins. And that may
so that would be good, and in deference to the dedicated work of the technical folks at this end in Boston, who are now 50 minutes past the time that I told them they would have to be here. Although I know that all of us could keep on talking about this, I'm going to draw this to a close, but tell you all, we've recorded it, we have the presentations, we're going to put them up on the Maccabees Project website. We are going to figure out how we can get this forum response thing working so that we can keep the conversation going. And we are going to meet in 1 month, same time, same place, with these excellent facilities and helpful folks to continue this discussion. So with thanks to all of you in the evening in various parts of the global intellectual universe, we're gonna say so long from Boston and Shana Tova to everybody, and we'll be in touch.
Enough of that.